Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now. Novak Djokovic has fired a warning shot at the next generation, refusing to accept that his era is over despite the dominance of Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner. With his eyes set on an 11th Australian Open title in Melbourne, the Serbian legend is pushing back against the narrative that tennis has moved on without him. In this deep dive, we explore what Djokovic's defiant comments really mean for the power struggle at the top of men's tennis. Is this just the confidence of a champion? Or does the 37-year-old actually have what it takes to hold off two players in their absolute prime? We break down Djokovic's chances, analyze the physical and mental battle he's facing, and examine why his refusal to surrender might be the most compelling storyline of the Australian Open. From his recent form to the tactical challenges of facing Sinner and Alcaraz, we cover everything you need to know about tennis's most fascinating power struggle. Plus, we look at whether Djokovic's legendary mental strength can overcome the age gap and what it would mean for his legacy if he actually pulls off another Melbourne miracle. Let's start with the context here. Djokovic is coming to Melbourne as arguably not even the favorite anymore. That's wild to say about a guy who owns the Australian Open, who's won it 10 times, who's basically had a standing reservation for the trophy for over a decade. But Sinner won it last year. Alcaraz is playing the best tennis of his life. The betting odds, the predictions, the general consensus, they all point to one of those two winning. Djokovic knows this. He's not stupid. He reads the narratives. He sees the way people are talking about him now compared to how they talked about him 3 years ago. He understands that time is undefeated and that eventually every athlete has to step aside for the next generation. That's how sports work. That's how life works. But understanding something intellectually and accepting it emotionally are two completely different things. And Djokovic is not emotionally ready to accept that his time is over. More than that, he doesn't believe his time is over. And that belief, that refusal to acknowledge reality, even when reality seems pretty obvious, is what's made him one of the greatest athletes in any sport. Think about Djokovic's entire career. How many times have people written him off? How many times have the narratives shifted against him? When Federer and Nadal were dominating in the late 2000s, everyone said Djokovic was clearly the third best player, and that was where he'd stay. He proved them wrong. When he had that injury-plagued period in 2017, people said he was done, that his body had broken down, that we'd seen the best of him. He came back and won 5 more Grand Slams. When Alcaraz beat him at Wimbledon in that epic final, people said that was the symbolic passing of the torch. Djokovic went out and won the US Open and Olympic gold. The guy feeds off doubt. He thrives on people underestimating him. And right now, the entire tennis world is basically saying that Sinner and Alcaraz are the present and future, and Djokovic is the past. That's catnip to him. That's exactly the kind of narrative that brings out his best tennis. "I'm not waving the white flag" isn't just a quote. It's a declaration of war. It's Djokovic telling Sinner and Alcaraz and everyone else that they're going to have to rip the crown from his hands, that he's not just going to hand it over voluntarily, that every single match against him is going to be a battle. And here's the thing, he might actually have a point. Yes, he's 37. Yes, the age gap between him and his main rivals is significant. Yes, there are legitimate questions about how long his body can hold up under the physical demands of elite tennis, but it's not like he's fallen off a cliff performance-wise. He was in the Wimbledon final last year. He won Olympic gold, which might have been the one thing missing from his resume. He's still beating top 10 players regularly. The issue isn't that Djokovic has become a bad player. It's that Sinner and Alcaraz are so incredibly good that even prime Djokovic would have his hands full with them. And current Djokovic, while still elite, isn't quite at his absolute peak anymore. So the matchup is difficult. But difficult isn't impossible. Let's talk about the Australian Open specifically, because that's where this is all building toward. This is Djokovic's best tournament, like, by far, 10 titles. He's won it more than anyone in history. The courts suit his game perfectly. The conditions favor his style. He knows every inch of Rod Laver Arena. He's got the crowd mostly on his side, despite his complicated relationship with tennis fans. If there's anywhere Djokovic can make a stand against the next generation, it's Melbourne. And he knows this. That's why he's targeting this tournament specifically. That's why the white flag comment comes now. He's not just making a general statement about his career. He's specifically saying that at this tournament, in this place where he's dominated for so long, he's not ready to concede anything. The tactical battle is going to be fascinating. Sinner and Alcaraz both present unique challenges for Djokovic. Sinner's game is built on taking time away from opponents, on hitting massive ground strokes from both wings, on not giving you any breathing room. That's tough for anyone to handle, but it's especially tough for an older player who needs a split second more time to set up and hit their shots. Alcaraz is different. He's explosive, creative, willing to try anything. His movement is insane. His shot selection is unpredictable. For someone like Djokovic, who's built his career on reading opponents and anticipating what they're going to do, Alcaraz presents a puzzle. You can't always predict what he's going to try, because sometimes even he doesn't know until the moment he hits the ball. But Djokovic has advantages too. Experience, obviously. He's been in more big matches than Sinner and Alcaraz combined. He knows how to manage energy over a long tournament. He knows how to win ugly when he's not playing his best. He knows all the little tricks and tactics that only come from playing at the highest level for nearly 2 decades. And then there's the mental side. Djokovic's mental strength is legendary. The guy has ice water in his veins in big moments. He's won matches he had no business winning purely through force of will. He's broken opponents mentally before the match even starts, just by being Novak Djokovic. That's a real advantage, especially against younger players who haven't experienced that kind of pressure as often. Sinner's mental game has gotten much better, but he's still relatively new to being the hunted instead of the hunter. Alcaraz is fearless, but fearlessness can turn into recklessness in tight moments. Djokovic knows how to exploit those little cracks. He's done it his entire career. The physical component is the biggest question mark. Can Djokovic's 37-year-old body hold up over 2 weeks of best-of-5 tennis in Australian heat? Can he recover quickly enough between matches to bring his best tennis every time? Can he handle the baseline wars with Sinner, who can go shot for hours without breaking down? Can he chase down everything against Alcaraz, who'll make him run all over the court? These are legitimate concerns, but Djokovic has been managing his body better than almost any athlete in any sport. His training methods, his diet, his recovery protocols, they're all cutting edge. He's gotten this far at 37 by being smarter about how he prepares. And it's not like he looked particularly old or slow in his recent matches. He's still moving well. He's still hitting the ball cleanly. He's still Novak Djokovic. What's really interesting about this whole situation is the psychological warfare aspect. By saying he's not waving the white flag, Djokovic is putting pressure on Sinner and Alcaraz. He's essentially saying, "You think you're the favorites? Prove it. You think I'm done? Show me." That's a smart play, because now if either of them loses to Djokovic, it's not just a loss. It's a failure to capitalize on their supposed advantage. Sinner especially has to be feeling this pressure. He won the Australian Open last year as a breakthrough champion. Now he's expected to defend it, and one of the biggest threats is a guy who's supposedly past his prime. If Sinner loses to Djokovic, the narrative will be brutal. You couldn't beat him even when he's old. That kind of thing stays with you. Alcaraz has a bit more room because he's already beaten Djokovic in big matches, the Wimbledon final, for instance, so he's proven he can do it when it matters most. But that also means Djokovic has extra motivation when facing Alcaraz. There's unfinished business there. There's a score to settle. The broader storyline here is about legacy. Djokovic has already secured his place as one of the 2 or 3 greatest players ever. He's got the Grand Slam count, he's got the weeks at number 1, he's got the complete resume. another Australian Open title, doesn't fundamentally change his legacy, except it kind of does, because if he can win it at 37 against this level of competition, with everyone counting him out, that becomes one of the signature achievements of his career. That becomes the thing people talk about when discussing his greatness. Remember when he was 37 and everyone said he was done and he just went to Melbourne and won it anyway? That's legendary stuff. And Djokovic knows this. He's always been acutely aware of his legacy, of how he'll be remembered, of his place in tennis history. That's part of what's driven him to achieve what he's achieved. So this isn't just about winning another tournament. It's about adding another chapter to a story that's already one of the greatest in sports. The "not waving the white flag" comment also reveals something about Djokovic's mindset. He's not approaching this Australian Open as a farewell tour or a victory lap. He's approaching it as a genuine competitor who believes he can win. That's important. Because if you go into a tournament already accepting that you're probably not going to win, you've lost before you start. Djokovic isn't doing that. He's going in believing he's the best player there, regardless of what anyone else thinks. Is that delusional? Maybe a little. But elite athletes need a certain amount of delusion. They need to believe things that the stats and the odds say aren't true. They need to convince themselves that they can do things that seem impossible. That's how impossible things get done. And look at the alternative. What if Djokovic came out and said, "Yeah, Sinner and Alcaraz are clearly better now. I'm just happy to compete and see how far I can go"? That would be gracious and realistic and completely out of character. But more importantly, it would be conceding defeat before the competition even starts. It would be accepting a narrative that might not actually be true. Because here's the reality. We don't know if Djokovic can win the Australian Open. We don't know if his age will catch up to him or if his experience will carry him through. We don't know if Sinner and Alcaraz are ready to completely take over or if they'll stumble when the pressure gets intense. We don't know any of this for certain. What we do know is that Djokovic refusing to surrender makes this tournament infinitely more interesting. If he had just accepted his role as the elder statesman who's playing for the love of the game, that would be a nice story, but not a particularly compelling one. Instead, we've got genuine drama. We've got a legendary champion refusing to go quietly. We've got a three-way power struggle at the top of the sport. The media is going to eat this up. Every match Djokovic plays is going to have this storyline attached. Is this the one where age catches up to him? Or is this another example of him proving everyone wrong? The closer he gets to the final, the more intense the narrative becomes. And for tennis fans, this is incredible, because we get to watch something that doesn't happen often, a true legend making one more stand against the inevitable. We all know that eventually time wins. Eventually, Djokovic will have to accept that he can't compete with the next generation, but maybe not yet. Maybe not at this tournament. Maybe he's got one more miracle run in him. That's what makes sports compelling. The uncertainty, the what-ifs, the possibility that something unexpected and amazing might happen. Djokovic is giving us that possibility by refusing to accept what seems like the logical outcome. Sinner and Alcaraz have to be watching all this and having complicated feelings. On one hand, they probably respect Djokovic's fighting spirit. They grew up watching him win Grand Slams. They know what he's accomplished. There's probably a part of them that appreciates his refusal to quit. But on the other hand, they're competitors. They're hungry. They want their era to begin in earnest, and having Djokovic still winning tournaments delays that. It prevents them from fully establishing themselves as the undisputed best players in the world. So there's probably some frustration there too. The ideal scenario for them would be to beat Djokovic decisively at the Australian Open, to end any debate about who's better right now, to send a message that the changing of the guard isn't just happening eventually, it's already happened. That's what they need to do to truly take over. But Djokovic isn't going to make it easy. That's what the white flag comment is really saying. He's telling them that if they want to be the best, they're going to have to beat the best. not a diminished version of the best, not a guy who's already given up mentally, the full, competitive, motivated version of Novak Djokovic. And that's a hell of a challenge, even if you're Carlos Alcaraz or Jannik Sinner, because Djokovic, at his best, is still better than almost everyone at their best. The question is whether he can consistently reach that level anymore, and the only way to find out is to watch him try. That's what we're going to get at the Australian Open. We're going to see if Djokovic's belief in himself is justified, or if it's the last gasp of a great champion who can't accept that his time is over. We're going to see if Sinner and Alcaraz are ready to fully take over, or if they still have some work to do. We're going to see one of the most fascinating storylines in recent tennis history play out in real time. And Djokovic is going to be at the center of all of it, refusing to surrender, fighting for every point, proving once again that he's one of the most competitive athletes who's ever lived. At 37, chasing an 11th Australian Open title, facing two of the best young players in the world, Novak Djokovic is not waving the white flag. There's something poetic about this moment, too. Djokovic has always been the guy fighting against narratives. When Federer and Nadal were the beloved rivals and he was the third wheel, he fought to be respected. When the crowd always seemed to cheer for his opponents, he learned to feed off the negative energy. When people said he'd never catch Federer's Grand Slam record, he surpassed it. His entire career has been about refusing to accept what other people said was inevitable or impossible. So this final chapter, where everyone's saying the next generation has arrived and his time is over, feels like the perfect setup for one last Djokovic story. Win or lose, the fact that he's not going quietly is completely on brand. This is who he's always been. The question is whether Sinner and Alcaraz can make him. Who do you think wins this power struggle? Is Djokovic's experience and mental strength enough to overcome the age gap, or are Sinner and Alcaraz just too good right now? Drop your Australian Open prediction in the comments and make sure you're subscribed, because this tournament is going to be absolute chaos. Hit that like button if you're pumped to watch Djokovic try to prove everyone wrong one more time. This is the kind of drama that makes tennis unforgettable.